Hello. So thanks a lot for having me over here. My name is Amrit and I'm a fourth year grad from VIT. I've done my engineering in computer science. Currently, I'm working for Ion Group, Delhi, and I received my offer through VIT last July, and I've been working here since the past 7 months. So about Ion Group. So Ion Group is primarily an automation company founded in 1999, and it is the leading company in the domain which it specializes in and further beyond. Now, the domain which it works includes, say, trading and execution, there's risk management, position calculations, connectivity to stock exchanges, there's technology for the middleware and back offices, so various other companies like big investment banks, firms, private banks, public banks, etc. Now, about where it is situated, so there are a lot of offices for Ion all around the world. To name a few, there are offices in London, New York, there's one in Tokyo, Frankfurt, Madrid, Toronto, Chicago, Singapore, Sydney, and India. So in India, the headquarters is in Delhi, but there are many other offices across India. So there's one in Pune, there's one in Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, and yeah, obviously there's one in Noida and Gurgaon, which is part of the Delhi office itself. So I currently work at the Delhi office. Yeah. So about the application and selection process. So the application process was quite straightforward. We had to register in the campus attraction portal, and the company would then shortlist based on our resume, CGPA, and other information. Now, I remember around 1,200 people were shortlisted for the actual exam, the first coding test. Now, the test itself, it consisted of two sections. There were around 20-25 MCQs, which were based on, say, operating systems, object-oriented programming, networking, DBMS, etc. And the second section was two coding questions. Now, the coding questions were, I'd say, medium, and I was able to finish both of them with all the test cases running. So, whoever got through this first round of say the coding round was later called for further interviews. That where I think they were scheduled the same day. So how many students applied and cleared it? So I remember the first round there were around 1,200 people who applied, and for the interview processes they selected around 150 people, and by the end of the first day, that is by the end of the first two rounds, the technical rounds, there were around 38 people who proceeded to the second day, which was the IN day. And after the IN day, the total number of people selected from VIT were around 15. Okay, so the interview process totaled around 5 rounds. Now, the first two rounds was something which they called the on-campus round. So, in case this, say, the interview was not during the pandemic, if it was off-campus, the first two rounds would be held at VIT, and the next three rounds they invite candidates from all over India to their Delhi office, and over there they conduct the last three rounds. Now, if you see the quality of rounds, the first two rounds primarily dealt with, say, the technicality of the candidate. So it was pure technical. They asked more of coding questions, and the last three rounds, the third round was more related to Ion's business, and it had a few other aspects such as the business outlook, the financial outlook, etc. And the fourth and the fifth round were primarily HR. They were with the top managers from Ion, and they were more behavioral rounds rather than technical. And how did I prepare for each of these rounds? So one thing was the HRs were really helpful. So at before every round, they would tell us what this round was about, and there was like a WhatsApp group where we all were there, and people kept telling that your next round is this, and so this is the technical round, and so on. Also, obviously, before the interview process, I went through a lot of online. I browsed a lot about IN interview process and IND and etc. So that helped me a lot. So especially websites like there is Geeks for Geeks and sometimes Glassdoor. So all these websites are really helpful in helping you understand, say, what kind of questions you could expect in such companies. And obviously, I'm going to discuss about some of these questions further. So my strategies. So I'd say practice a lot of DSA. So I think from I had my interview in July, and from January till July, I rigorously practiced data structures, algorithms, coding questions a lot every day on every platform I could find. So I did a lot of lead coding. There was Geeks for Geeks for a lot of material as well as practice. Then there's HackerRank, there is InterviewBit. So all these websites are great. Now, apart from your data structures and algorithm, is something which is really important. Apart from that, you also need to concentrate a lot on operating systems, and there's also networking which you need to concentrate for a few companies, say Cisco, which ask a lot about networking, and then you also could practice SQL queries, like writing SQL queries. So and in turn also revise DBMS. So all your say core computer science subjects, just go through them and specifically deep dive into operating systems and object oriented programming, since a lot of companies tend to ask a lot of questions on OS and object oriented concepts. So yeah, that could be the technical strategy. Now your another thing you need to work on is your personality and the way you give interviews. So one thing which you need to really understand is that you need to be likable. You need to be someone who's able to impress the interviewer. Now, for this, you need to listen to the interviewer's hints. You need to give your inputs, but also take in his inputs. And yeah, so that is something which you will realize after watching, say, a lot of mock interviews. I used to watch a lot of mock interviews on YouTube, and also giving interviews. So you can give mock interviews with your friends or your parents, etc. So all these small things that helped me a lot in getting through this. Okay, so about the questions during the coding and the interview process. So as I said about the coding round, there were 20 MCQs. Now these MCQs were theoretical, and say there were problem sums like math problems. Now you could, if you have a good grasp of concepts in OS, OOPS, and networking, you can quickly get through the theoretical ones. The math ones are something which I find even more simpler, since they're like school level math, and you can quickly do them. So they're related to speed, distance, and all these kind of problems. The coding part is what you could say is the more difficult part. So the first question I remember for me was something from graphs, and it was a small modification of BFS DFS. So I was able to solve it quite easily, since I had done it before. Now the second question was dynamic programming. Now dynamic programming is something which usually people consider as hard. So yeah, I'd recommend spending a good amount of time in your preparation for dynamic programming related questions. So after the coding round, I had my first interview round. Now this interview round was the DSA questions were pretty simple. So so they were like questions like, how would you reverse a string without using extra space, and simple operating system questions like, what do you think is inheritance, and what are the solid principles, or what do you think are what are the asset principles, and questions on DBMS, questions on OSI model from networking, and questions on OS. And also, so he asked me what my favorite language was for say oops. So I said Java. So he asked me a few rules of like rules for Java in inheritance and stuff like that. So that went well. And after that was my third round or my second round of interview processing. Now in this round there were two interviewers. Now from what I understood, one of the interviewers more uh, was more leaning towards DSA related questions and core like those mainstream DSA related problems. And the second interviewer, he was asking me a few behavioral questions, plus he was asking me puzzles. Now, out of the puzzles he asked me, I had done one or two earlier. I found them on like I did them on Geeks for Geeks, so I found those same puzzles in the interview, so it was easy. And one or two were new, out of which I could solve. I couldn't solve one actually. Like I gave an answer which was not optimal, but he told me that I was really close, so I could just go ahead with the questions from the other person, which was more DSA related. Now, I got a question from her about how would you sort if you have a huge million, if you have say millions of entries, how would you give the maximum first K entries? So now you can. This is a very popular DSA question. I gave her the algorithm for a heap, and that worked. Then she asked me a few questions about how Facebook, say in how Facebook, if you want to design Facebook, what would be the best data structure you would choose? Also, why would you choose that? So we know that Facebook is about connecting people, and I think in VIT they taught this in part as part of a course. Like we use graphs for such kind of problems. So I explained her how I would use graphs for such a use case. And then third, she followed up with a proper dynamic programming question. So what she asked me was she gave me a snake and ladder game, and she asked me that what was the dice rolls I had to make to win the game in the least, like say the least amount of dice rolls I had to throw to win the game. So this was a dynamic programming question which I hadn't done before, but I had done many similar questions earlier. So I quickly came up with the naive solution, which was of recursion, and then I quickly optimized it with my memorization, and it became a DP. So that was my second round, and I could tell like they were impressed and they were quite happy. So that went well, and then I was called for IND. Okay, so on Iron Day, my first round was, as I mentioned, a business round. Now, this was something very new to me and something very unique to Iron, which I hadn't I hadn't seen before. Now, in the business round, this person he gave me a problem statement. There was no math, there was pure English, and it was basically a scenario of a company which didn't really exist. So there was some company A which did so and so, and company B who was its say a competitor or a compare a similar company of that sort which did something. And then there were a few questions, and then I had to discuss the business logic behind this. So I'd say you don't really need to prepare for this round, and this is something which is which iron tests if you have these kind of skills, and you just need to be really active and read whatever is there carefully, and have a healthy discussion with the interviewer. And one thing you need to remember is they really give you really nice hints, to help you out if you're going wrong or if you're not getting the answer. So just take care of that. So I at first I remember not going the wrong way of it, but later he really helped me out and it went well. So after this round, I got selected for the next round, which I was told is a managerial round or a behavioral round. Now this round was with the director of IIN Pune. So and yeah, so I was kind of nervous, but that person was nice enough to, calm me down, and he was really chill. Like he was cracking jokes, and he was really good. Now after that, he didn't ask me any technical questions. What I had with him was a discussion. So he went through my resume and he just asked me random experiences which I had in various companies, and he asked me about the software development lifecycle, which and what I thought about it. So we had a very good discussion about why why companies or why teams are agile, and how the how a project in a company like Iron works, where you take in the requirements, and then there is subject matter expert, there is the coder and stuff like that, and all of those things. So again, for these kind of things, it is good if you remember a bit of software engineering from your college, but you don't need to remember everything, because they understand that that we are not professionals, we are students. So that round went particularly well, and I was that like I could see like that person is impressed, and he also said that I did great. So after that, my final round was with the country head, and now this round was pretty unique again, because there were four of us and the country head. Okay, so this was not like a single person in four interviews, but it was reverse. So there were four of us and a single country head. Now the country head, what he did was he individually asked us questions, and none of the questions was about, say, our out from our resume, or about technical skills or managerial. It was it was just about us. So he would just ask what our hobbies were, and he would give us random situations. He would ask us what is more important to us, say, long-term success or short-term gains, and stuff like that. And it was, yeah, it was mostly say behavioral. There were no technical questions. And post that, I think the next day I got my selection email. So my view about coding clubs. So I was never in any, or say, official coding club at VIT. I was actually part of a robotics team, for which I was the computer science head, and so I competed through that, and that was kind of the club I was part of all 4 years. Now, but I had a very say a very healthy inner circle of my friends who were really into, say, coding, competitive coding, and they were also with me in the team. So that really helped me a lot. Where we shared a lot of questions, we did a lot of pair programming, we asked each other doubts, we shared if there was any competition, we would compete together and all that. So I feel that helped me a lot. But yeah, I would recommend such, say, coding clubs and all, because you get to meet people who also share an interest towards coding, which really in turn help you a lot for such companies. Yeah, so resume building. So resume building is something which you actually gradually learn, because initially, you feel like putting a lot of stuff in it, but that shouldn't actually be the goal. So you want to put everything on your resume, but all of that you put, you should be answerable. So don't put anything which you don't know. Now, another thing is about your, say, it'll be great if you could include coding handles, and if you have any metrics, say if you have ranks or stuff like that, which to which you can give a number, so that those things, they help you a lot. Say if you have, say, you have a top 100 in some competition, or if you're top 5 in some coding handle, or if you're a 3-star or 4-star coder on some particular, say, coding platform. So all those help a lot. Now, internships and projects. So I'd say something, projects is something which you have control over more than internships, because internships is, there is a bit of luck also involved there. So I'll start with projects. Now for projects, it will be great if you include your favorite projects from your J component which you do at VIT, which are also, let's say, which have some value. Now, this value could be some research value, or say some value, some profitability value, or let's say some change which this project brings um, in your college or in the society. Such kinds of projects are really helpful because you can justify them, and they usually counter question your project, so you can tell them more about these projects. Now, internships. So for internships, there is you kind of be you kind of need to be out there since second and third year. You need to advertise yourselves, and it'll be great if by third year, if you are really good coders, then there are many companies which come in VIT for coding tasks. Now, these they don't take as many students as they take for full time in the fourth year. So these opportunities are a bit less. So it'll be great if you could find, say, some off-campus opportunities for internships. So you need to keep applying in a lot of internship programs in different, say, colleges, in companies. So for me, I in my second year, I got in touch with a startup through a hackathon, and they hired me for my first internship uh, at the end of my second year. Third year, again, because I was part of a robotics team, through them I got in touch with a company in Chennai, and I was under the R&D team for an year, and I was a paid intern there. So um, that was my whole my third year to fourth year. So again, that helped me a lot in building my resume as well as getting some experience, getting some real full-time experience even before I was placed. So that really helped me a lot. And yeah, so all you can take all these things into consideration while building your resume. So soft skills, as I said earlier, soft skills do plays an important role in interviews, since one of the things I said was that you need to be a likable person during an interview. So apart from your hard skills, that is your coding and all these behavioral rounds is something which is make and break. Now, I have a lot of friends, and even in my case, there were points where I cleared all my interview rounds, but I got rejected in the HR round because I said something which I shouldn't have said, or I revealed something which was something which was a red flag. Now, because of this reason, I'd say we in the long run you should take your soft skills classes seriously, and that these do help a lot. Yeah, so about the placement ratio, so now I know about the computer science branch, so I think a majority of people, say about 70% of the people, were able to secure super dream or dream jobs, and I'd say like 10 to 20% of the people who applied got regular jobs, but I'd say overall everyone did get placed, so there was 100% placement. And but say all these statistics don't really matter, because finally it comes to the individual. No matter from which branch you're on, you can score an amazing placement with an amazing salary, and it is something which is completely based on that individual. So about the CGPA, now CGPA plays a very important role, as we move on to these online interviews and online coding rounds. So the reason for this is, so personally I was not a nine pointer when I was applying for jobs. I only became a nine pointer later on, after my fourth year's first semester. So the reason why CGPA is so important is that they can only interview so many people. All right, they don't have the manpower to interview, say, more than 30, 40, or 50, or let's say max 100 per company. So for the same reason, once you're giving a coding round, and there can be a lot of ties and draws. So I remember there were two or three coding questions, and I used to solve all of them. but say they were easy. So a lot of people who had CGPAs above me and below me also solved them. So then they had to put a cutoff, because they can only interview so many people. So CGPAs do matter a lot, but sooner or later, say if you have, say, you don't have a great CGPA, so you have 8 or 7, it doesn't stop you from getting placed. You might get placed later, but it doesn't mean that you'll get placed, say, in a worse company or a better company. It it is completely based on chance, and also based on how you are, like, say, what kind of candidate you are. Okay, so some tips for the juniors. So I'd say you can keep three things in mind. The first thing is, have your DSA skills top notch. Keep coding, if possible, right from your first day in your first year. Keep coding, keep coding. Find your favorite programming language, read DSA, and start coding. Solve as many problems as you can, because it is only going to help you till your third year or fourth year when you face your job offers. Second thing is to have your core CSE concepts on point. Now, the core CSE concepts I mean are like operating systems, DBMS, networking, etc. So this means that when you are studying for your CAT, FAT, or even in your everyday classes, just pay some extra attention to these subjects, because the more your concepts are clear on this, the more it's going to help you in the long run. Because even after you get a job, these concepts help you all the time if you want to be a software engineer. And the third thing is what we talked about is CGPA. Now, CGPA is something which the higher you have, the lesser barriers you have during the placement process. So it'll be great if you can maintain, say, a 9 plus throughout, and that's going to benefit you a lot. So if you keep these three things in mind, these are the three most important things I'd say which you should have to earn a great placement at VIT. And the other things are something which is secondary, because you can have amazing projects, you can have amazing internships, you can say have amazing coding handles, right? These are only gonna bolster your your already amazing resume. But just try to have these three things on point, and you're great.